ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशम तम नमाम्यहम. We have been studying Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and the 5th chapter heading was qualifications of the aspirant and the teacher. Qualifications are not like BA, MA, PhD here. Qualifications means what spiritual merits he should possess to become a real aspirant, and what spiritual merits he should possess to become a competent teacher is the chapter. And we have seen that in the previous chapter, Swamiji has talked about incarnations, which are the world teachers. And then he said that we have to deal with lower teachers. And so some criteria are essential. Otherwise, if you go into wrong hands, whatever we have also will go away. Swamiji will tell us that it is not like a professor of chemistry or mathematics, that we have to see only his output. But the giver of spirituality must possess it. Otherwise, he will lead us to wrong paths. And that also Swamiji briefly dealt with in the last chapter, telling Andhe Naiva Niyamana Yathanda, like blind leading the blind, it will happen. So in this chapter, Swamiji discussed first the criteria which makes us, the spiritual merits which makes people the real aspirants. And Swamiji has told 3 things there: purity, real thirst after knowledge, and perseverance. People, some of them may be a little wonderstruck that Swamiji is talking of aspirants for bhakti and is telling of real thirst after knowledge. So, we have studied in the first chapter itself that knowledge and bhakti go hand in hand. If knowledge is not just information or so-called intellectual conviction, if knowledge is the change of our consciousness, change of our basic awareness into the right awareness which the rishis or the Upanishads possess, then this change of consciousness always will give us more and more love of God. And that will help to get us love of God, and love of God will help us to change our consciousness. So that being the relation, we should not be surprised at the mention of knowledge, nor should bhaktas be afraid of this world knowledge, nor should any revulsion or such ideas should come in them when they hear of knowledge, because we have seen that. We have seen some so-called, I have to add, devotees of Sri Ramakrishna who are mad after reading the gospel. But as soon as a passage comes dealing with, this is not for me, this is not for us, like that they would skip and go to another passage of bhakti. If we start dealing with scriptures in this selective way, then we are not reading the scriptures, we are reading our own thoughts in the scriptures. But such things do happen. Generally among the devotees, somehow there is a misconception that we have to do nothing with knowledge. So, we should remember here, Swami Vivekananda in his Bhakti Yoga never harbors this idea, nor he wants us to harbor such ideas. So in the first chapter he has cleared it, and now without any contraction he mentions as a necessary qualification or spiritual merit of the aspirant after Bhakti Yoga, aspirant who is going to reach God through Bhakti Yoga, that he must have a real thirst after knowledge. Now we turn to our attention to the word thirst and real thirst. When we say some pleasant drink, some soft drink or some drink, pleasant drink, then even if you do not have thirst, we will partake of it. But when it comes to pure water, we will take it only when we are thirsty. So this hankering is equated with thirst. On the opposite side, our desires in the world have been described as thirst, especially in the Buddhist literature, Tanna and Trisha, that means Krishna, thirst. So it is an urge of the soul, that is the meaning. Urge of the soul, that I want knowledge, I want my consciousness to be changed. Unless that is there, we are not qualified to enter the field of Bhakti Yoga. As I already told you, the difference between Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga. So when we want to realize God through Bhakti, it becomes essential to have a thirst, a hankering, a drag, a pull to get our consciousness changed. And then purity, Swami just told in the beginning, impure mind does not go to God. He may appear to think of God to fulfill some of his desire. There are many people who believe in God and pray to God and worship God and show devotion for God to get some object in the world. Swamiji has equated these people by telling that their notion of God is like the chairman of a municipality. That I completed the construction of my house. Please connect water to my house. Please connect gas to my house. Please connect electricity to my house. That is what we think of God. When due to so many desires, we have seen plenty of these things. One extreme example comes to my mind, whether extreme or not you think. My Guruji, when he was a college student in Calcutta, while coming from college to his house, there was a Shiva temple in between. And he used to go inside, bow down, pray and come out. And he noticed that one beautiful or good-looking girl, well-dressed, was sitting very near the Shivalingam and was very earnestly putting out her heart or prayer to him. So he became a little curious to know what this girl is praying. So while circumambulating, he went near from that girl and he found she was a prostitute and she was requesting Shiva to bring such and such a rich man to her parlor. That was the prayer. So apparently great bhakti, but we cannot call it Bhakti Yoga by any means or manner. Now this is an extreme case, but this illustrates that many of us feel like this. I want this, I want that, I want that, I want that, and I have great faith in God, and so I pray to God. So, there God is not the object of our love, mind you. Our object of love is some object which we desire, and God is the means used to get that. So that is not bhakti also, no question of Bhakti Yoga. But if you have Bhakti Yoga anchor for, we must have purity, the absence of so many desires. That is the main point. To the extent that if we have 10% purity, we are going to get God. As Jesus has declared in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. But some amount of purity, more and more purity is essential, not only to become bhaktas, but to be able to judge whether the Guru is right or not. So Swamiji has first described the qualifications of the Shishya before describing the qualification of the teacher. So that this type of Shishya only will get a correct teacher. This type of Shishya only will be able to judge whether the teacher is correct or not. And we have seen last time that those with impure thoughts, they will always definitely get cheated by the so-called gurus. So, Swamiji, when he was moving through the Chicago fair, one man, ill-dressed, ill-equipped, gave him a bit of paper, crumpled, not good handwriting, and he wrote that, if you give me $10, I will give you 100. Swamiji told him that you could have at least printed this on a better paper. So, but people will fall in the trap. For 10 rupees, $10, if they are going to get 100, those who desire will feel trapped and they will give him $10. And then if he does not give you $100, you should not blame him. You are wrongly expecting $10 to be changed to 100. Such people are cheated by the so-called gurus. They promise a lot. Why you went there? Because you wanted those selfish things unjustly. So, that is why purity of purpose is necessary not only for our bhakti yoga, but to be able to judge whether the guru is proper or not. And real thirst after knowledge. Here again, some people have some hankering for knowledge, secular. Some people are hankering for scholarship. Some people are hankering for book knowledge. They will get that type of scholars. They will not get the teachers of spirituality. And the third quality, perseverance, we discussed at length last time, that if you want quick spirituality, you will not get a guru. You cannot judge a guru. So, perseverance, not only patience, but sticking to our path till we reach the goal is perseverance. And this is necessary condition of the disciple or aspirant, and a necessary condition with which he can judge a proper teacher. With this now, we turn our attention to what the teacher should be. So we are now begin this new para. In regard to the teacher, we must see that he knows the spirit of the scriptures. Not essential that he has read the scriptures, mind you. For example, Sri Ramakrishna's disciple, Adbhutananda Swami, who was illiterate, who could not read and write, and he was a master teacher of bhakti or of jnana and of spiritual life. So, spirit of scriptures is Brahmajnana only. Spirit of scriptures is the love of the indescribable, lovable God. That is the spirit of scriptures. On the contrast, the whole world reads Bibles, Vedas and Qurans, but they are only words, syntax, etymology, philology, the dry bones of religion. That means that has nothing to do with religion. So Swamiji calls it dry bones. They are great scholars in words, syntax, pada padartha vakyartha over here. So words, syntax, etymology, philology, how the word is formed, how the language has been formed. Etymology, that means the meaning derived from the word, the dry bones of religion. The teacher who deals too much in words and allows the mind to be carried away by the force of words. Words have their own force, externalized force, loses the spirit. It is the knowledge of the spirit of the scriptures alone that constitutes the true religious teacher. Swamiji is now quoting from Shankaracharya's Viveka Chudamani on this point. The network of the words of the scriptures is like a huge forest, in which the human mind often loses itself and finds no way out. Shabdajalam Maharanyam Chitta Brahmana Karanam. That is the translation already given by Swamiji. Again he gives, the network of words is a big forest. It is the cause of a curious wandering of the mind. Next, the various methods of joining words, the various methods of speaking in beautiful language, the various methods of explaining the diction of the scriptures are only for the disputations and enjoyment of the learned. That is a bhoga of the learned. They do not conduce to the development of spiritual perception. So, this is how Shankaracharya decried those dealing too much with the word and oratory. Vagvaikari, Shabdajari, Shastra Vyakhyana Kaushalam, Vaidusham Vidusham Tadvat, Bhuktaye Natu Muktaye. Vaidusham, scholarship of the scholars, is for their enjoyment. It is not for mukti. Those who employ such methods to impart religion to others are only desirous to show off their learning. That does not convey any spirituality. We only know, oh, wonderful, he is so much a scholar. So that the world may praise them as great scholars. You will find that no one of the great teachers of the world ever went into these various explanations of the text. There is with them no attempt at text torturing. Text torturing means bringing out some meaning which is not intended by the author. That is the meaning of text torturing. No eternal playing upon the meaning of words and their roots, yet they nobly taught, the real teachers. While others who have nothing to teach have taken up a word sometimes and written a 3-volume book on its origin, on the man who used it first, and on what that man was accustomed to eat, that is the normal PhD or deletes, and how long he slept, and so on, for one word. Bhagwan Ramakrishna used to tell a story of some men who went into a mango orchard and busied themselves in counting the leaves, the twigs and the branches, examining their color, comparing their size and noting down everything most carefully, and then got up a learned discussion on each of these topics, which were undoubtedly highly interesting to them. But one of them, more sensible than the others, did not care for all these things, and instead thereof began to eat the mango fruit. And was he not wise? So leave this counting of leaves and twigs and note-taking to others. This kind of work has its proper place, but not here in the spiritual domain. Proper place, as I said, for PhD, delete, it's all right. You never see a strong spiritual man among these leaf counters. Religion, the highest glory of man. One point is again and again striking me here, though in Swamiji's time it was very regular, nothing striking, But these days there is a tendency to separate religion and spirituality. And here we are continuously seeing, in one sentence if Swamiji uses the spirituality, next sentence religion. Almost alternately it is going on. So it is identical in Swamiji's mind. Religion means spirituality. Spirituality is the only religion. Otherwise what we know by religion is external ritualism only. In this respect, I usually tell a funny thing, that in this iron age, as we call it, the words have lost their meaning. Those who have nothing to do with the fundamentals of a religion are called fundamentalists. The rank externalists are called fundamentalists. Fundamentals of every religion is how to realize God. That they do not know anyway. Religion, the highest glory of man, does not require so much labor. That means it's a wastage of energy. And Swamiji has here inspired us to go after religion because it is the highest glory of man. To realize God, nothing can be the higher glory of man. He has the potential to do that, and he should do that. If you want to be a bhakta, it is not at all necessary for you to know whether Krishna was born in Mathura or in Vraja, what he was doing, or just the exact date on which he pronounced the teachings of the Gita. You only require to feel the craving for the beautiful lessons of duty and love in the Gita. All the other particulars about it and its author are for the enjoyment of the learned. Let them have what they desire. Say Shanti, Shanti to their learned controversies, and let us eat the mangoes. That means go directly into spirituality. So the first condition is spirit of scriptures. And for that, Swamiji has contrasted from the scholarship in the scriptures. The second condition, and this spirit of the scriptures can be judged by a proper bhakta. The second condition necessary in the teacher is sinlessness. Their purity was relative. Here, sinlessness means absolute purity. The question is often asked, why should we look into the character and personality of a teacher? We have only to judge of what he says and take that up. This is not right. If a man wants to teach me something of dynamics, of chemistry, or any other physical science, he may be anything he likes, because what the physical sciences require is merely an intellectual equipment. But in the spiritual sciences, it is impossible from first to last that there can be any spiritual light in the soul that is impure. In the spiritual sciences, it is impossible from the first to last that there can be any spiritual light in the soul that is impure. What religion can an impure man teach? You see, spiritual, next line, religion. The sine qua non of acquiring spiritual truth for oneself or for imparting it to others is the purity of heart and soul. A vision of God or a glimpse of the beyond never comes until the soul is pure. Hence, with the teacher of religion, we must see first what he is and then what he says. He must be perfectly pure. and then alone comes the value of his words, because he is only then the true transmitter. Through words, now for example, the radio, on the electronic waves, the sound waves are loaded. When we receive the electronic waves, we receive the sound waves also. So, the spiritual man is speaking, so they are sound waves. On that his spiritual experience, that spiritual waves are mounted. And when we catch his words, we receive the spiritual waves also. If that is not there, what the words will convey? Sometimes we are so infatuated with a lecture. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What did he tell? Nothing. So, hence within the teacher of religion we must see first what he is and then what it says. He must be perfectly pure, and then alone comes the value of his words, because he is only then the true transmitter. Because of the transmitter, I compared it with the radio waves. What can he transmit if he has not spiritual power in himself? Again, spiritual power should not be confused with the power of working out miracles. That is not spiritual power. Spiritual power means power to awaken spirituality in man. There must be the worthy vibration of spirituality in the mind of the teacher, so that it may be sympathetically conveyed to the mind of the thought. Sympathetically means we feel oneness with that person, and then the spiritual thought arises. The function of the teacher is indeed an affair of the transference of something, and not one of mere stimulation of the existing intellectual or other faculties in the thought. Actually, is giving something real and appreciable as an influence comes from the teacher and goes to the thought. So, it cannot be physically seen, but it is an influence, appreciable, real and appreciable. So, real and appreciable is not only the physical things. Real and appreciable is the influence. Comes from the teacher and goes to the thought. Therefore, the teacher must be pure. The third condition is in regard to the motive. Why is teaching us? Some of our people, some of the lecturers are highly pleased when some big government officials come to his meeting, or big moneyed people come to his meeting. Then the seniors or the friends ask him, how many sadhaks came to your meeting? Has it benefited the spiritual aspirants? The third condition is in regard to the motive. The teacher must not teach with any ulterior selfish motive for money, name or fame. His work must be simply out of love, out of pure love for the mankind at large. The only medium through which spiritual force can be transmitted is love. That is the only medium of teaching is spirituality. Any selfish motive, such as the desire for gain or for name, will immediately destroy this conveying medium. Love cannot function where other considerations are there. Absolutely cannot. God is love, and only he who has known God as love can be a teacher of godliness and God to men. So, these are the three conditions, and if we have the conditions of a proper Shishya, we can well judge these. When you see that in your teacher these conditions are all fulfilled, you are safe. If they are not, it is unsafe to allow yourself to be taught by him. For there is the great danger that if he cannot convey goodness to your heart, he may convey wickedness. Because the thought waves, the sanskara waves, will always go with his words and actions. So when you receive them, all these things will come to you. This danger must be, by all means, be guarded against. So he quotes from the scriptures, Shrotriyo avrujino akamahato yo brahmavittama. The supreme among the knower of Brahman, he who is learned in the scriptures, who has understood learned in the scriptures, catching the spirit of scripture, sinless, unpolluted by lust, and is the greatest knower of the Brahman, is the real teacher. Akamahato, who is not injured by desires. From what has been said, it naturally follows that we cannot be taught to love, appreciate and assimilate religion everywhere and by everybody. There is a saying, Shakespeare's, the books in the running brooks, sermons in stones and good in everything. Suppose somebody's eyes are opened, then he can learn so many things from the museum. But if the eyes are not open, what can he see there? So one who already has appreciation of spirituality, he can find books in the running brooks. He can find sermons in stones and good in everything. Is all very true as a poetical figure, but nothing can impart to a man a single gain of truth unless he has the undeveloped germs of it in himself. So when the seeds are there, then only it will grow. To whom do the stones and brooks preach sermons? To the human soul, the lotus of whose inner holy shrine is already quick with life, opened with life. Lotus of whose inner holy shrine. Where is that inner holy shrine? Our heart. And that is described as a lotus, not only by the yogis, but because the Lord is going to sit there, so it should be a lotus. That means the inner receptive personality. And the light which comes to the beautifully opening out of this lotus comes always from the good and wise teacher. When the heart has thus been opened, it becomes fit to receive teachings from the stones or the brooks, the stars or the sun or the moon, or from anything which has its existence in our divine universe. Universe itself is calling divine for the bhakta. But the unopened heart will see in them nothing but mere stones or mere brooks. A blind man may go to a museum, but he will not profit by it in any way. His eyes must be opened first, and then alone he will be able to learn what the things in the museum can teach. This eye-opener of the aspirant after religion is the teacher. With the teacher, therefore, next point, conditions of the disciple he has described, condition of the teacher he has described. Now next point is the relation between the disciple and the teacher. This is a very important point in the development of spirituality or bhakti yoga. This eye-opener of this aspirant after religion is the teacher. With the teacher, therefore, our relationship is the same as that between an ancestor and his descendants, like the father and the son. Without faith, the attitude of the student towards the teacher now. Without faith, humility, submission and veneration in our hearts towards our religious teacher, there cannot be any growth of religion. So the student has to be proper, the teacher has to be proper, and the relation has to be proper. And this is the relation. Faith, humility, submission, and veneration in our hearts towards our religious teacher. There cannot be any growth of religion in us. And it is a significant fact that where this kind of relation between the teacher and the taught prevails, there alone gigantic spiritual men are growing. Apparently, in some other places, Swamiji is showing us, while in those countries which have neglected to keep up this kind of relation, the religious teacher has become a mere lecturer. The teacher expecting his $5 and the person taught expecting his brain to be filled with the teacher's words, and he is going his own way after this much has been done. I have attended many such functions or conferences in our own country where the listeners think that their business is to listen. The speakers think their business is to teach. None of them are sadhakas. Even the speaking, if it is not from a Brahmajna, then it is for the Parabhakta. It is a sadhana that is speaking. And the listener has to be a sadhak to receive it. But generally it is only a meeting, you speak and he listens, and both go their own way. Under such circumstances, spirituality becomes almost an unknown quantity. There is none to transmit it and none to have it transmitted to. Religion with such people becomes business. They think they can obtain it with their dollars. Put to God that religion could be obtained so easily, but unfortunately it cannot be. Not by dollars. Religion, which is the highest knowledge and the highest wisdom. So again he has brought knowledge, and not only knowledge but wisdom, cannot be bought, nor can it be acquired from books. You may thrust your head into all the corners of the world. You may explore the Himalayas, the Alps and the Caucasus. You may sound the bottom of the sea and pry into every nook of Tibet and the desert of Gobi. You will not find it anywhere until your heart is ready for receiving it and your teacher has come. So religion comes from teacher to the open heart. And when that divinely appointed teacher comes, that is another thing. The spiritual law is there, that you have your own teacher, as if appointed by God. And when that divinely appointed teacher comes, serve him with childlike confidence and simplicity. Freely open your heart to his influence and see in him God manifested. So the power of the teacher comes from the God. Those who come to seek truth with such a spirit of love and veneration, to them the Lord of Truth reveals the most wonderful things regarding truth, goodness and beauty. So in the next chapter, incarnate teachers and incarnations. Swamiji has referred to incarnation to show the most ideal teachers. And then he came down to the other teachers. But now, as a part of Bhakti Yoga, it is an absolutely essential thing, almost essential thing, that we love an incarnation. The manifestation of whatever we think of God is present in a man, as Jesus would have it, the Son of God, the Son of Man. As Shankara in his introduction to the Gita says, that Gita has a speciality, not found in Upanishads. Vasudevakyam Param Brahma Visheshata Abhivajayan Gita Shastram. Parabrahma who appears to us as Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, the son of a man. And that is what the speciality of the Gita is, to explain the divinity, Brahman, which has come as man. So this avatar is the speciality of the Gita, which is not in the Upanishads. And for bhaktas, it is almost essential. So Swamiji is now taking us to two words he has used: incarnate teachers and incarnation. That means some of them are come from God as teachers, and some from God have come not only to teach but to show the life and teach. So he has used two words: incarnate teachers and incarnation. Incarnation means God embodied. Wherever his name is spoken, now Swamiji is taking us in a flight of feeling, without arguing. Wherever his name is spoken, that very place is holy. How much more so is the man who speaks his name, and with what veneration ought we to approach that man, out of whom comes to us spiritual truth? Such great teachers of spiritual truth are indeed very few to number in this world, but the world is never altogether without them. They are always the fairest flowers of human life. Ahetuka Daya Sindhu, the ocean of mercy without any motive. Acharya Mam Vijaniya, know the Guru to be me, says Shri Krishna in the Bhagavata. The moment the world is absolutely bereft of these, it becomes a hideous hell and hastens on to its destruction. So always there are such people. Higher and noble, this is about the Gurus. Now he takes us higher. Higher and nobler than all ordinary ones are another set of teachers, the avatars of Ishvara in the world. They can transmit spirituality with a touch, even with a mere wish. Swami Abhedananda has composed a stotra on Sri Ramakrishna, and that he mentions, Sansparsha matrena nrinam samadhi vidhaya sadhya bhuvi Ramakrishna. And as Swamiji is telling here, Sansparsha matrena also was not necessary. Sankalpa matrena nrinam samadhi sadaya vidya bhuvi Ramakrishna. So, with a touch, even with a mere wish, the lowest and the most degraded characters become, in 1 second, saints at their command. Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyavad. Sadhureva samantavya. Samyak vyavasthito. We have seen this example in Sri Ramakrishna's life. They are the teachers of all teachers. Acharyanam Acharya or Jagat Guru. The highest manifestation of God through man. We cannot see God except through them. Important point, please, very important point. When we think of incarnations, some people do not like the idea. And they say man is always limited. Swamiji is challenging here. If we try to make any idea of God, it will be through our limitations. It is only when we see incarnation, then we know what is God. Important point, please. And especially in Bhakti Yoga. Everywhere in spirituality. We cannot see God except through them. We cannot see God except through them. In the Gita 14th chapter, Bhagavan tells, Brahmano hi pratisthaham. If you want to see Brahman, see in me. We cannot see God except through them. We cannot help worshipping them. And indeed, they are the only ones whom we are bound to worship. We are bound to worship because we want to worship God. Again he repeats, no man can really see God except through these human manifestations. If you try to see God otherwise, we make for ourselves a hideous caricature of Him. Through our limited intellect, if we try to see God, it becomes a hideous caricature. But when we see God in man, then we understand. And believe the caricature to be no worse than the original. That means we think that this is the like original, but it is a caricature. There is a story of an ignorant man who was asked to make an image of God Shiva, and who after days of hard struggle manufactured only the image of a monkey. So whenever we try to think of God as He is in His absolute perfection, we invariably meet with the most miserable failure, because as long as we are men, we cannot conceive Him as anything higher than man. From a human mind we are considering Him, to us it is nothing more than man. The time will come when we shall transcend our human nature and know Him as He is. Time will come. Through the incarnation we rise. Devo bhutva devam yajet. That is possible then. But as long as we are men, we must worship Him in man and as man. Talk as you may, try as you may, you cannot think of God except as a man. You may deliver great intellectual discourses on God and all things under the sun, become great rationalists, and prove to your satisfaction, that all these accounts of the avatars of God as man are nonsense. You can prove intellectually. But let us come for a moment to practical common sense. What is there behind this kind of remarkable intellect? Zero. Nothing. Simply so much froth. When next you hear a man delivering a great intellectual lecture against this worship of the avatars of God, get hold of him and ask him what his idea of God is. What he understands by omnipotence, omnipresence and all similar terms beyond the spelling of the words. He does not know, we do not know the meaning of the word, only we know the spelling of the word. He really means nothing by them. He cannot formulate as their meaning any idea unaffected by his own human nature. People say, if God is infinite, how can be present in a man of so many cubits? Because we have no idea of infinity. Infinity in our mind is only vastness like the sky. Infinity means one without a second. And that one without a second consciousness is manifested in this man. He is no better off in this matter than the man in the street who has not read a single book. That man in the street, however, is quiet and does not disturb the peace of the world. So this intellectual, so-called rationalist and whatnot, and where the big talker creates disturbance and misery among mankind. Religion is, after all, realization. We have discussed this point, realization. It is not imagination, it is not intellectual ideas, it is something real which we experience. And we must make the sharpest distinction between talk and intuitive experience. Intuitive means beyond senses, beyond reason, there is a directness of experience that is called intuition. This word intuition also is very wrongly used. Sometimes I feel the doctors have intuition. My friend was a great devotee and a great doctor, he said, our science is developed instinct, not intuition. By dealing with the same subject time again and again, it has entered as a sanskara, so that is an instinct. Intuition is beyond the senses. Between talk and intuitive experience, have I told you a funny story? Just to make our mind light, let me narrate a funny story. 4 players are playing at cards. Now the youngest of them is really expert. So by the bidding and the play, he can estimate or judge what cards you are holding. And he plays accordingly. The senior most among them was sitting next to him, said, you are looking into my cards. He said, how can I look? You hold it close to your face. But again, as expertise, he could do it. Then he said, you are looking at my cards. He said, no. Then how do you know that I held this card? He said, I knew it by intuition. So he said, you have used a big word. Can you tell me the spelling of the word intuition? He told the spelling. Then he said, what is the meaning? He said, I do not know. Then how have you used it? He said, by intuition. By intuition I can know what your cards are. How you use the word intuition? If you do not know the meaning, by intuition. So, and there was a great laughter throughout. So, that is how we normally use the word intuition. By repeated practice, some knowledge comes to us, that is instinctive knowledge. Intuition is supersensuous perception. And we must make the sharpest distinction between talk and intuitive experience. What we experience in the depths of our souls is realization. That means the depth of our souls means not by indriya, not even by the mind. The soul directly experiences God. That is intuition. Nothing indeed is so uncommon as common sense in regard to this matter. Because common sense in this matter tells this, but this is not with the people. By our present constitution, we are limited and bound to see God as man, because we are men. If, for instance, Swamiji is giving example now to make us understand, Upamana Praman, not ratiocination. If, for instance, the buffaloes want to worship God, they will, in keeping with their own nature, see Him as a huge buffalo. If a fish wants to worship God, it will have to form an idea of Him as a big fish, and man has to think of Him as man. And these various conceptions are not due to morbidly active imagination. Morbid means sick. Sickly active imagination, that is not the thing. Because he is a man, so constitutionally he is the man. Natural. Man, the buffalo and the fish, all may be supposed to represent so many different vessels, so to say. All these vessels go to the sea of God to get filled with water, each according to its own shape and capacity. In the man, the water takes the shape of man. In the buffalo, this is mental shape. In buffalo, the shape of a buffalo, and in the fish, the shape of a fish. In each of these vessels, there is the same water of the sea of God. When men see Him, they see him as man. And the animals, if they have any conception of God at all, must see him as an animal, each according to its own ideal. So we cannot help seeing God as man, and therefore we are bound to worship him as man. There is no other way. So all this talk of anthropomorphism about God and about the world, anthropomorphism is idea in the human mind. That is what is going to happen. Two kinds of men do not worship God as man. We leave this paragraph for next class. So today we have seen criteria of the student, criteria of teacher, relation between teacher and student. Without that, spirituality will not grow. And we have come to the chapter on incarnation, where God incarnated as man only. We can understand God only through the incarnation. That is what Swamiji had to learn after a struggle of 4 years. And so is pouring out his heart to us, what he has learned. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.